All right, so sensory processing is a condition that affects children in a number of different ways. You got to think of sensory processing as we all function at a certain level. And by functioning, I mean we have this tier where when we meet and greet and work with all of our friends and family, we function in an area like this. And so we have our little ups and downs, but for the most part, it doesn't affect us in a negative way. For our younger kids that are experiencing sensory issues, we have kids that are down here, which is on the low end, and I'm doing this with my mouse, or here, whoops. Sorry about that, folks, where it's on the very high end. With low processing or low stimulation, and that just means that this is the child that wiggles around a lot, is maybe bumping into things, is squirming, looking at other people, what they're doing, getting up and walking around the room a lot. They're not purposely trying to be disruptive. They're trying to bring themselves up to where they're more functioning in this level than down here. If you think of us like adults, when we get up in the morning and we're a little sluggish, we go for it and get our cup of coffee and we drink that caffeine, and that caffeine brings us up so that our brain kicks in and we're functioning and we can do working really well. Kids, on the other hand, don't have the benefit of caffeine, so they start looking to the environment to help them find that stimulation that brings them up to that level. The child that's too high is the one that is like on complete overload. They're either going into meltdowns, or they are really they're hiding. They're looking for a way to get away from whatever it is that's around them. Now, the thing is, you can have somebody that's at this really low level 1 second and then don't know what the trigger will be. The next thing you know, they'll be way up here at the high and looking to bring themselves down. Now it becomes, what do we do to help these kids so that we can help them, especially the low energy ones, so to speak, get themselves up without disrupting the class. So we can look at different things that you can do in the classroom. These are the kids that, when you're reading a story, let them kind of walk around and listen. They're still taking in everything that's going on, but at the same time, they're not necessarily interrupting anybody else. They might benefit from having therapy clay or therapy putty or something, some kind of a squishy thing that they can sit there and move with their hands, because that movement of the hands and things is providing an input that will help bring them up to that level. You could have like a weighted blanket or something that would put weight on their lap, and that will help them also. Just that input of the weight will help bring them up to the point where they can be participating in a classroom setting. Now, the child that's overly stimulated, we have to have them pull them aside so that they can allow them to calm down and provide them with, again, things that will help to soothe them. That can be something like a really soft stuffed animal or stuffed toy, that there's something that they can stroke, that they can, again, squeeze and cuddle to them, that will help bring them down to the level where they then can participate in the classroom setting again.
For those students that are really high, is it that when they're taking in these inputs, they're not sure what to keep and what to discard? For example, if there's a lawnmower outside or the buzzing of fluorescent lights, would you say that that's why they're feeling or potentially feeling overwhelmed and overloaded because the brain can't sort and decide what stays and what goes?
That is a piece of it, but sometimes it's just kind of like if it's kind of, I think of Chinese water torture, where they say that it's just like the drip, drip, drip that's hitting you. And for these kids, that noise, that constant noise is just kind of like that irritant that's just like feeding on them. And it's like they can't shut it out. They're not able to pretend like that noise doesn't exist, or that they can push it aside and focus on the story that's being read. They look at it as a disturbance, and it becomes very upsetting to them. And so next thing you know, they've reached their saturation point, and that's when the meltdown starts to happen.
And
So
for the low, is it that you need maybe to incorporate movement throughout activities, or
movement is
engage?
an excellent thing for all kids anyway. I mean, and so if we have a child that's looking for that movement, then we can bring the whole class into it, and we've got everybody moving, and it's going to be to the benefit of everybody, and especially the child that's really needing that input to help them be where they need to be in the classroom setting.
Have you ever experienced children or seen children on the sensory processing spectrum where they go quickly from the high to the low, or vice versa?
It happens. The calming down and going quickly is a lot harder than somebody that's really, really low and then all of a sudden reaching that overstimulation like that. That's probably the more common one. But yeah, the one that's looking for that stimulation, there is a fine line sometimes as to how, when something is too much of an arousal, and then the next thing you know, you've got them, to where they can't handle it. And the times I've seen it is usually where things are going pretty good, but then like the noise level in a room, because of the acoustics or whatever, reaches a point that just triggers it up to that melting point. And that's when that sometimes happens. And that not so much in the classroom, but maybe a parent might see that, like if they go out to dinner and everything is fine and copacetic in the car and everything, and you get into a restaurant where the noise level is so intense that these kids just can't tolerate it. And the next thing you know, that's the best example of when you have that from 0 to 100 kind of moment, with that overstimulation.
Great. Okay. Well, that was a really helpful explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome.